really exciting guest with me. He's the founder of Not to Mention Media. He's also one of the founders of digital agency founders, Oliver Peirce. I'm really excited to talk to you because I know you've got a lot of agency experience. I know you're among the Facebook Masters group that I work with. Tell me a bit about what you guys do at Not to Mention Media, and then I want to talk a bit about the digital agency founders.
Okay, cool. So Not to Mention Media was started actually as more like a freelancer as myself about 5 years ago. And really back then we were like, proper like scatterbrain stuff. So we were literally doing like a bit of all sorts. So like copywriting, email newsletters, a little bit of graphic design, a little bit of SEO, basically kind of like what we could get our hands on. So slowly but surely sort of things evolved. And we had a couple of clients asking for like social media management. And obviously that was kind of like dipping our toes really into like Facebook and the world of Facebook and proper digital media stuff, really. So digital marketing stuff. And yeah, and then sort of slowly but surely that kind of took over. And at that point, we were really not concentrating on like ad side of stuff. But actually a client actually brought it to our front and our attention. And then that's sort of something we slowly started moving into. And funny enough, our first guy was actually like a comedian based in Africa, of all things. But yeah, so we started off there really. And then sort of slowly but surely really, we sort of tailed away a little bit further from all the peripheral stuff and really focused on Facebook ads. And then we found ourselves again in a bit of a situation where we didn't have any, particular niche. And that was obviously becoming a bit of a problem because it meant that every time that we picked up a new client, it meant that we were having to like learn the whole system all over again. The best copy, the best creative, the right audiences, targeting, that kind of thing, etc. So this was like, as I say, becoming a bit of an issue. And I said at that point, we're dealing with like construction sites, plumbers, a couple of e-commerce stores, no coaches actually. But it was literally all over the place. And then we started to actually focus more into like e-commerce. And that did really well. We really enjoyed that. But we were finding that it was something that we didn't enjoy as much as like we hoped to enjoy, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, no, actually.
Yeah, so then we kind of thought, we've done a bit of lead gen work within like, within that period of time, obviously, more like local lead gen stuff. And e-com, we just found it was getting it wasn't tedious, it was just becoming a more competitive market to get those clients that we were after. Yeah. So after a little bit of time, we kind of, at the end of the day, I suppose it's about money as well as something you enjoy. So we sort of put the two together and decided that we're going to focus on two markets, and that was lawyers and accountants. And my wife's actually an accountant, so that was a no-brainer. I did only 1 year of law at Open University, so that was the other no-brainer. So then, yeah, we essentially started to sort of focus on law firms in the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK. So that's kind of where we are with it at the moment.
It's really interesting though, because I find, hearing the story, it's to me, I'm just hearing the last few years of our industry and its evolution. Yeah. Play out in your freelance career. So it's sort of like you're sort of on the edge of, okay, this is what we as marketers do, and we do copy and we do this, and oh, digital's taking over. Okay, now we got to focus. We're going to focus we find ourselves focusing exclusively on that. I mean, my personal story is somewhat similar in that I had worked with an agency. I'd been there for about 10 years. When I started, they were very small. They were only about 7 or 8 people. Mm-hmm. Grew up to about 50 people or so, and then there was this sort of gradual decline. And I think the main reason was exactly that social media had changed. I noticed this certainly by the time I had left, that it's not that the budgets disappeared, right? Which is often the case when agencies are firing. It means that budgets are going away. It's usually marketing is usually the first thing to get cut, right? When a company's hurting. So that would be usually historically my first impression is, okay, the economy maybe is shrinking or something, but the budgets weren't going away, they were just shifting. And so to hear how you have evolved and how you, as a freelancer and as an agency, to me just speaks of how quickly things are changing in the world and with technology and how we communicate and how we market.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, literally the point that I moved from freelancing into an agency was actually at the point that we decided to dedicate ourselves into like Facebook ads. Because at that point, it just kind of made sense that I can't just do the decent amount of work that people deserve on my own. It requires like all kinds of collaborative help and staff. So at that point, it just kind of made sense. Once we niched originally into e-commerce, it was at that point, which was two years ago, something like that, that we decided to form a limited company.
Yeah, and it's funny too to hear all of these sort of things that you're weighing or debating, because I have a lot of the similar things. It's like, lead gen versus e-com. Well, okay, e-com has incredible potential. When you've got a great product and a great brand and great marketing behind it, it can be exceptionally complex. So same thing. Sometimes I'm weary with which kind of e-com clients I'll take on. I won't take on drop shippers, for example.
Yeah.
Same thing with niching down. I'm very 360. I love all aspects of marketing. Like I like the copy. I like the video production. I like the programming and the coding. Right. So that's in a way a bit of an Achilles heel. Although one of the things that I love is the fact that I am still open to any industry. I love learning about new markets and industries, and that the client kind of inform me. But yeah. I totally hear what you're saying. It is good advice. I don't follow it, but it is good advice to niche down in the way that you have.
And I think also, the problem with like looking at e-commerce, looking back kind of retrospectively, is that, well, a couple of problems. Is one of them, it's dropshipping essentially have flooded the market, which has obviously pushed up the price. It's the kind of like supply and demand, and that works the same with Facebook. And one of the problems is that you'll find that although there's e-commerce stores popping up left, right, and centre, that the majority, well, in my opinion, it's only it's only my opinion. It might not be, it's not true data, but that it seems that a hell of a lot of the majority is coming through as drop shipping. So I was finding that even the quality, and it's exactly what you said, it's the quality of the e-commerce stores that are coming through that's the issue. And every one in like 20, maybe if that, you find that are actually like really genuine. And even the good ones, then you might find that they're not even allowed to sell it on Facebook. So we had like supplements. Okay, you can work with supplements, but it's like really tricky industry.
Yeah. Well, it's when you're dealing with dropshipping. The thing is, I can be an amazing marketer, but do you have the budget to compete with Amazon? And the chances are, no, you don't. They've got a hold on the search engines. They've got a hold on the advertising. And again, when it's dropshipping and people know that they can go and price compare anywhere, it's a tough. That's a very difficult thing to establish. Doesn't mean that you can't be done, but you really have to be, have a solid brand.
Yeah, what about you? Because I know obviously you run almost like, I know they're not quite an agency, but I know is it JD Navin, and you've got your, I believe it's Balls to Your Face is really the
balls in your face marketing is the name of the show.
Yeah, I believe that was the acronym.
Yep, and then on top of that, I've recently launched my own online training academy in partnership with an event planner. So it's marketing and event planning, and it's an education platform. So yeah, exactly. I do I do 360 because again I'm very clear to people that I'm a virtual model. Mm-hmm. So the way that I often kind of pitch or say that is that we offer any and all of the services that large agencies, traditional agencies offer, but without the trappings of traditional agencies, namely exposed brick walls, ping pong tables, and retainer contracts.
Yeah.
And the retainer contracts is probably the most distinct one. And it's not that we don't enter into retainer contracts. We will. We're more than happy if a company says, hey, we want you to just take over our marketing, do everything for us, step in. But what I find, with a lot of businesses that I work with, they are willing to take on some of their marketing internally. Two, that it's consistent with what I often talk about this sort of economy of authenticity, that there's an advantage to, and there's good reason for them to take ownership to an extent of their marketing and communications. And so we've been very open and willing to training opportunities where we'll set up infrastructure for them and kind of get the ball rolling, but then we'll train them so that it's like, here, if you want to manage this yourself, you can do that. Mm-hmm. And then that way they're not beholden to us. And I think that has endeared us in a way to a lot of our clients. So JD Nevins is the main agency, but yeah, the show, the show is really just sort of a value add. It's a give back. is really, and it's just a good opportunity for me to meet, have cool conversations with people like yourself who are in the industry. Hopefully through that, give value and insight to people out there who are do-it-yourselfers, who can't afford people like us. That's really the hope. And I just really have learned, I haven't thought transactionally in a long time.
I think part of the issue is the whole kind of digital marketing economy becomes like so complex, and really like now, and I'm sure it's pretty much the same with you, like when people ask, in the famous words of Mark Zuckerberg, well, what do you do? Well, Senator, we run ads.
Yeah.
I try and kind of keep it simple. I know there's so many kind of complex variations, but you can only sort of explain and try and like educate in a certain way, unless you're obviously selling someone like systems and a sort of full educational system like yourself. That's sort of the only way through of explanation. Otherwise, you end up sort of like muffling the entire system. And I think part of the issue is, I'm not kind of trying to go against what you're saying, but I think part of the problem is people do want to take it on themselves because they haven't got the money, or they think they're basically being tight with their budget. So I think part of the problem is that, but obviously if you haven't got the other option, then that is the next best option. I completely agree.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and for sure, it's a very common occurrence for people then to say, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. Yes, we want to, and then of course the realization of the complexity, the time involvement, that they may very well come back.
Yeah.
So you have a point that it's people don't often fully understand what we do, the complexities, and also these days too, right? There's a bit of an addiction to the metrics, right? I mean, if since you've been in the industry for a while, that a decade ago, 2 decades ago, we didn't have nearly the types of KPIs that we can. And it's exciting, and you can really find your audience, target them, create a sales funnel that operates a model. Yeah. But people have lost sight of traditional branding, long-term value of a customer. There's so much more to what we've always done that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And people are forgetting that stuff, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and actually, it's something I was going to touch upon, and I think that's, the way, I don't know, we can cover in a minute how you feel that, especially Facebook's moving forward, but the way I see it, they're sort of simplifying things in some sense, but harder in the others, and I mean in terms of the kind of techie, sort of nerdy side of Facebook that all requires basically IT skill is kind of like moving away and being made simpler. And my opinion of why that is, and I think it's a correct thing, is that because it allows for digital marketing to be marketing and not to be because you're good at IT. Because for me, digital marketing shouldn't be because you're really good at computers. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about marketing. I'm not saying billboards, but I'm talking about, great copy, great hooks, great imagery, like the whole, like I say, branding, the whole thing together, and not being worried about like, oh, I'm super whiz with APIs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is also just the evolution of the technology itself. Like, I mean, they just keep getting better and better at it to the point where the AI is outperforming a lot of, so this well, right? Like, strategies that we used to deploy, we used to say, okay, don't let Facebook decide. We'll tell it what to do.
Yeah.
And nowadays, how many marketers do you know right now just saying, I just made it very general and very broad, and I just let you Facebook automate it, and holy smokes, the results were great. So, the algorithm's clearly getting better and better and better.
Do you reckon that AI may be the demise of many digital marketers?
It changes the landscape, and yes, to an extent, yeah. I mean, I think we underestimate sometimes we underestimate what AI is capable of and overestimate what it is capable of in various instances. Mm-hmm. But the one that I think it certainly already is doing reasonably well at, one is gaming our emotions. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's getting a little scary to the point, where like, an AI bot with a camera can tell you all kinds of things about you right? By your facial expression. Like they're better at detecting micro expressions and all kinds of things about you that we don't even detect from each other. And then, as this technology gets good with contextual language, is essentially able to start writing the copy and experimenting copy by itself, and then determining what is the winner. Yeah, I think that there always is, but that said, that technology will always spew out a certain consistency with what it creates.
Yeah.
I think. And, I don't know that, it has the creative capacity that humans have.
No.
And people will always want to stand out in a way it's like, okay, if that's what everyone's doing, how can I do something different? And so to that extent, there's always going to be a role. I mean, we play a fundamental role in business, as far as I'm concerned, and in life in a way. Like, we facilitate communication and connections. And that is a human, like, that's the thing, is you'll never remove the human out of the equation. At some point, even if you're just trying to sell to people, it's not going to be bots to bots.
Yeah, I agree. I think, actually, I was speaking to my wife about this, and she's an accountant, and there's so many like new softwares that's making things automated. And she works for a big corporate company, and even them, they are suggesting, like, oh, hypothetically, you could be out of a job in 10 years, etc., etc. But, and I don't mean illegal creative accounting, but I just mean there's always a need for creativity. And I think, well, maybe down the line AI can do that, but I think, we're talking a hell of a long way off from having creative thought, because AI at the moment can't inspire thought from nowhere. It has to have a sense of logic, and it has to have a source. The information has to come from a source. And I appreciate that AI systems, especially maybe Facebook, are reading lots of different characteristics and interests of people, but that still doesn't really sort of create creativity, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's too, like, I mean, what the human brain, like the number, how much, what we're capable of, and the computational sort of efficiency of the human brain is still light years ahead of this technology. The analogy that I use for where we're at with technology, I said we're at horse. And the reason why I say that is that there's this very famous psychology study of this horse that everybody was like convinced that he could count. And so, and even the trainer, the owner, was like, this is a brilliant horse. And so they sent a whole bunch of psychologists who were very curious, like, can this horse really count? And what they realized through various sort of control testing was that, in fact, the horse was picking up on micro gestures of the trainer, so that when he hit the number, it's like, like count to 10, and he would pop, plop, 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 right to 10. And then when he hit 10, the 10, a slight gesture in the trainer's face indicated to the horse that he was done. And they figured it out that that's what he was picking up.
Yeah.
So similarly, very recently, they created this little like robot that was an AI bot, and it had sort of 4 arms. And they're like, they sent it with a mission, like, learn how to walk.
Yeah.
And it does. And then they chop off one of its arms, and they're like, okay, learn again, adapt your learning. So they plugged it into they're monitoring it, preparing it for a demo. And then so they can kind of visualize what its neural net looks like.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, there's all this concentration around this node. What is it doing? Well, the robot had figured out that by training its cameras on the experimenters' faces, that was a hugely valid data point for whether it was acting successfully or not. And so it had written its own subroutine to assess the faces of the experimenters.
So it was almost
doing what the horse did.
I was going to say, it's basically picking up the same kind of instincts that the horse had.
Yes, exactly. So that's where I'm saying, like, that's a good like gauge of like what I've seen the technology AI be capable of doing at its sort of highest form, and like a comparable animal and experiment that sort of shows at what level it's at. So that's why I say we're at horse. We're not human yet. But I have said many times that, I've got a video out there, like, you're going to lose your jobs. A lot of people, a lot of industries are going to be changed. And I think a lot of, and it's especially in pattern work, it's actually the middle class jobs I say. It's like, you know, if you're somebody who's in the medical industry who only like analyzes CAT scans, start looking.
See you later.
Because pattern recognition is where the AI is really strong.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to compete with a robot that's going to be able to analyze 200,000 scans per second. You're not going to be able to compete. Same thing with like, so exactly, accounting, especially like anything that's related to pattern recognition is essentially going to be replaced. I do believe that.
No longer will you need someone to be solving a Rubik's Cube in 10 seconds.
No, we don't. No, we don't need that. So that's my take. I don't know. What about you?
What, on AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's really a tricky one until it's constantly evolving and it's evolving very quickly. Only a couple of years ago, people were sort of, you know, poo-pooing the whole kind of idea of it all, really. Didn't see any kind of like future in it at all. You know, I think myself included. And I've, you know, in the last, well, probably like, even like last 6 months, things have like, you know, game changers. And I'm not talking like ManyChat, which is, you know, it's a bot more than AI. I'm talking like real sort of sophisticated algorithms. I just wonder at what point do they bring that kind of robotic side that you were talking about and integrate it with a sort of, I don't know, algorithmic side. I don't know if that's happening. It probably already is, but I don't know how far down the line they are to be able to utilizing that for gaining customer attention.
You can be assured that there's a drive for it. It's for sure. You know, a lot of that, you know, the flat out Facebook ads and stuff like that. Yeah, like I can see like the images, the copy, a lot of that being automated.
Yeah.
You know, it'll go to your website, it'll extract content, it'll once it, you know, it'll take some of that contextual knowledge and convert that into ad copy, and then run a few variations and test them against each other, and it'll know what its people respond to. So yeah, it changes. It's constantly changes. But I mean, I guess I don't feel threatened by it in the sense like Facebook can come and go, LinkedIn can come and go, YouTube can come and go. What we do is bigger and broader, like you said. Like there's experience, there's taste, there's broader strategies, there's the immediate conversions, but there's the long-term retention, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
There's, you know, how can for sure we're far away from a computer being able to gauge the sentiment that a brand, you know, the impact of a brand on people's sentiments and how brands affect us emotionally, which is really how they affect us, right? Like Nike, like just do it. It inspires something. It means something to people, right? Well, how does a computer gauge that? And it's so subtle and so complex that, you know, our industry won't be wiped out. It'll continue to change as it has. And I think people like yourself, myself, who are constantly learning, constantly talking to each other, that's the only way that you kind of stay on the cusp of it and know what's going on.
I mean, I look at things like Forex trading. I mean, it's not something I'm necessarily into, but I know that there's so many kind of like get rich quick schemes.
Sure.
You know, there's like robots and we can make you this, we can make you that. But at the end of the day, when you look at the real big players, you know, like JP Morgan, all the other big guys, they're still essentially working on like fundamental principles and doing like the human work. And it still seems like they are outdoing the automated sort of Forex trading. So it kind of says to me that, you know, that's an industry with billions. Basically, it's the world economy is invested in that idea, yet still nothing yet has sort of taken point. I don't know whether that's, to sound conspiracy, would be too dodgy, too much trouble. I just think, you know, if there's so much money in that sector that hasn't yet conquered it, I'm not quite sure it yet has in other areas such as like Facebook. But, you know, we'll see. And I think it's probably only around the corner, but it's just more about the capacity that its power, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that you have to keep in mind too, right, is just that there's so, like when clients come to me, like, what do you think of Facebook? What do you think of LinkedIn? What do you think of YouTube? And the answer is, in an ideal world, you are omnipresent 100% on all of them.
Yeah.
Right? In an ideal world. Okay. You can't. You don't have the budget. You don't have the time. So where are your priorities? But those priorities are not the same. Like that's the thing, is that there's no, you know, those get rich scams and so on. Like how many people can go and keep on selling the exact same thing until that runs out, you know? And same thing with, there's just so many platforms, technologies, new platforms will continue to emerge. I don't know that one technology can really kind of look at the big picture, right? Like usually any AI is usually still to a degree within isolation of what it was programmed for. It's not necessarily looking, okay, now let's go check out their profile here and let's go look at this and what's the economy, what's going on with the yen, right? Like it's not taking in all of the big picture in the way that we do.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's why when you see the biggest brands in the world and the really sort of big kind of social media gurus like Gary Vaynerchuk and people like that, and even yourself, it's really coming down to stuff that's old school, and it's something we're moving into, and that's content marketing, because I feel like that kind of stuff is the bread and butter of marketing. And I mean, you tell me. I mean, how is the content marketing through BIYF, helping you grow your JD Nevin? Is that helping? I would have thought it would be.
It is. It is. Absolutely it is.
Exactly.
Absolutely it is. And that's the thing. Like it's, I mean, I've said it and this, right? That people don't really, I mean, yes, we might be able to sell through a bot and through an ad and so forth, but usually there is, again, that branding, that affinity building. And that's, I mean, fundamentally as humans, we seek to connect. And so we're much more likely to buy from people and people who we know, like, and trust. And so this is the thing, is you're putting a person out, you're putting yourself out there, and you're allowing for an opportunity for people to get to know you and possibly like you. If they don't like you, so be it. That's the beautiful thing. Anybody can watch my name and say, the name of your show is offensive. I totally understand that. I totally understand it. But the thing is, like, here's the thing. Like, it's not like, I didn't go into it wildly. Like, here's the thing, right? I'm launching my own agency. I don't want to work with stuffy, vanilla marketing. I don't want to, with businesses who just, like, it's like, if you want a very sort of cut and dry, vanilla, corporate, I can do corporate marketing for you. But I mean, if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. There's plenty of marketers for you. I want to work on brands that are fun, that are exciting, that want to be bold. So that's that in a way, there's my niche.
Yeah.
Right. This is my brand, and it's either, and that's the thing, is it's an intangible. Like, how could I, you know what I mean? Like, people will get to know that through getting to know me through my material.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I think that kind of fishes out all the people that you essentially don't want. If your brand's offensive, and exactly what you just said, it gets rid of them. Cool. That's not who you wanted to be with anyway. So that works perfectly well for you. And I'm assuming, you know who your audience is, and that's how you've got your YouTube channel at such a high amount.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it was, my part was sort of like, it was a funny evolution. Like, it would kind of evolve from an accident. It started from this slip of the tongue of me just actually saying, like, to somebody in, like, the group, like, I really appreciate your balls in your face approach to sales. And then that became an inside joke, and that became a joke video. And then somebody was like, this should be a show. But it was really embracing the fact that I'd actually had compartmentalized myself. I had my professional persona, and then my real persona, who I would work with people who I was comfortable with. My real persona was tongue-in-cheek. I don't swear. Like, that's a funny, and maybe there's a bit of an irony with the show too, right? Is that, like, I'm serious. I talk about serious issues with my audience. I don't swear that much. I'm not really that crude. It's just sort of a bit of my sense of humor. And I used to keep that, kind of compartmentalize that. And then I embraced this economy of authenticity. I looked at people like Cat Howell and so forth, or even, Gary Vee, and he swears and so forth. And it's not the fact that he swears that makes them stand out. It's that they're being authentic. They're being themselves.
Yeah.
Authenticity has probably always been a currency. Yeah. There's an economy of anything. There's an economy in the coolness of shoes. There's an economy of precious metals. Some appreciate and depreciate in value over time. Authenticity, I think, is appreciating because, in a way that, everyone's automating everything, and it's so impersonal that people are now hungry for that personal.
Yeah. I think,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think, it's, even though it's a slip of the tongue, I think, balls in your face is really good, because it could have been like cock on your head, and I don't think that would have gone as well.
Right. It's funny how, yeah, and I've been able to, like, you know, it's well, most people get a good chuckle out of it. It's like I put a Z on the end of all, you know, and of course you see, like, I like every time that somebody does something great, I'll be like, that's amazeballs, right? And I'm able to kind of throw in my own branding into everything, right? You know, the last video that I posted, because I got this nomination for Women of Inspiration as a power partner. So I was like, so the question was, you know, who said chicks can't be ballsy? Because the name of the organization is Canadian Business Chicks, right? But exactly. And look, for some people, they might say that's a little colorful. That's a little. I totally get that.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. But for the most part, I find most people have a good sense of humor about it. People want to have fun with what they do. They don't, you know, we're not in rocket science. We're not in defense. You know what I mean? I want to have fun with what I do. It's marketing, it's communication, it's playful. I enjoy that, and that's what I want to do. And so once I kind of embraced that and who I was, and I think that's really the key. It's just the fact that I just started to there was no I hadn't compartmentalized myself anymore into professional persona, personal persona.
Yeah,
I allowed them all to become one entity, one me.
Yeah, absolutely.
From there, it just that resonates. People pick up on that, and they like it, and they respond to that.
Would you say? I mean, I'm stepping sideways slightly here, but would you say like events is really your thing? Because I know, you know, we spoke about before that you're a special event coordinator for Ben and Jerry's. And I'd love to, you know, hear a little bit more about how that went, you know, completely pear-shaped. I think that's such a brilliant story, and I think, you know, people would like to listen to that. But I wondered if does that kind of cross over into the kind of course side that you're now offering? Does that kind of like relate? Do you have fond memories of that kind of Ben and Jerry's? Because a company like Ben and Jerry's has got, you know, it's great marketing. It's fun. It's kind of child friendly, but adult friendly. It's got things you might think put people off. Like, personally, I love Ben and Jerry's fish food. Don't know if you have it in Canada, but we have it here.
Yeah, we have it. No, we have it. They had it back when I was working. That was a long time ago. That was about 20 years ago.
Oh wow!
And so that was before. That was while they were still their own entity. They since. By the time I left, shortly after I left, they were bought out by Unilever.
Yeah.
So that was what was really interesting about that was that, in fact, the core of my job really was essentially to execute their social mission. They had a very, like, clearly defined social mission, social advertising, corporate social responsibility. They were really pioneers in a way in that space of socially responsible business practices and marketing and so forth. It kind of hurt them in a way that they because they developed this reputation for that, they'd also then had to develop an infrastructure to manage and maintain that. So a lot of their business in a way became about sort of managing those social expectations, because once you announce yourself as that and say that's what you're for, now the consumer expects that of you. And if you ever have if you fail, all of a sudden it turns out that you're using sweatshops in China, for example, the media is going to come down on you hard for you know, falsely representing yourself. So
yeah.
So that was really interesting. The events after that, though, I didn't focus on events. It's only because I have partnered with a very talented event planner here in Toronto for this this training platform that we've built. The way I see it is, so most of my career has been focused on digital marketing, but without a doubt, and this really speaks to what you and I were talking about a little earlier, right? Like, as much as I love what we do, there's no question, and I say this to clients all the time, you know, the more personal, the more like face-to-face you get with people, the better the quality of what that interaction is. So if it's just an ad, it's very cold. If I get to speak to you on the phone, we're a little closer, because now we get to hear each other's tonality. So we're a little closer. You know, if I see you on camera, great. Now we can look at each other's faces and pick up on expressions and moods and that kind of thing. Face to face in real life, looking at each other in the eye, being able to shake each other's hand or pat each other on the shoulder, kind of a thing. The connection just gets that much closer and more meaningful. So, you know, I see digital as the non-human interface that leads to the more important, valuable genuine human interface. At the end of the day, like I said, you can't take the human out of the equation, and we seek to communicate, we seek to connect. And so events, I think, is just, they do go very well hand in hand. They're very complementary in the space of marketing at large.
And I think I'd like to, go back to what you're saying about, it's all about, as you say, as you go further down in things, whether you're speaking or face to face. And I think that's also the same with, with marketing in general. And I think part of the issue is that so many people have moved away from, again, what we were talking about earlier, being core marketing. But I think also people, whether it's lead gen, sales, courses, whatever it is, I think so many people are chasing the sale or the lead, like immediately, like there's the ad, click on it, make a sale. Really, it's better to be like top of mind, top of brand, just keep your face out there, whether, like you say, omnipresent on all platforms. Like, oh yeah, I've seen that guy on LinkedIn. Pretty much, I'm sure that's how Gary Vee became famous. I'm sure he's great at what he does. But really, it's that consistency of being everywhere at all times and people recognize your face. And after so long of seeing somebody, it's like a friend. You're more likely to be close with them if you see them more often. And I think you're more likely to make a sale or a lead if that person has seen your face around or your brand around a lot longer, a lot more frequently.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a bit about the digital agency founders, and what was the sort of the inspiration behind that?
So there is 12 of us on there, actually. We all have sort of slightly different backgrounds, mainly obviously within digital marketing, but split between, like, there's some guys that do branding in there, some guys that do like traditional, Facebook ads. There's some SEO guys in there. We've got a guy who is specialized in film. He's actually heading over to Texas next week to do a 20-part series over there on renewable energy. So, we've got like a real, like, kind of like licorice all sorts. And we kind of found each other through another sort of educational online blogging site. And we kind of, became friends through there. I mean, I laugh when I look back, because if I was 15 and someone told me that they made friends online with, 12 other people, I'd laugh at them. Yeah. It's an amazing connection that we've all made, and we're all from literally all over the place. Generally like Western, but there's like Australian, New Zealand, Canadians, a few English in there. And it's just something that we kind of like put our heads to, and we originally were there sharing resources with each other. Mm-hmm. And we actually called ourselves the Pickle Crew, which just was like one of those random things that came out of nowhere. Yeah. Probably a bit like balls in your face. It just sort of like slip of the tongue, doing like a Zoom chat like this, and it just, anyway. So we called ourselves the Pickle Crew, and we were sharing resources, to ourselves within each other, and we decided, you know what? I think between us, we've got the experience, the expertise, and the skills to help other people basically for free. And what we decided to do is, rather than just like pooling our own resources of just 12 people, why don't we make a system that gives authority, but also shares his resources to everybody. So the difference, I think, what we're trying to make is that we don't want, there's so many places. I mean, if you have like Yale in Canada, I'm assuming you have like, it's just a big place. Yeah. There's so many people that are doing that. But what we're doing, without trying to sound too snobby, is really kind of qualify, validate the people that are going on there. Because we don't just want like everyone on there. We want, it's a bit like going on TripAdvisor. You only go there to look for good places. You don't go on there to look for the shit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So what we're doing is really kind of like having as many people as we can coming in, and then sort of like essentially chucking out the rubbish. I'm sorry, guys, for anyone that tries to come in and doesn't make it. Really, that's really what we want to do. And, for our own kind of like marketing side, we're here to like, build content, do podcasts, database from everybody. And I think it's going to be a much more, everything we've done before is like niche, but this site is going to be like almost the opposite. We can help in kind of like any aspect down the line, whether it be courses, networking, whatever it is. It's essentially a shared resources database, and it's here to like help everyone.
What I find really interesting about it is, and this goes back to, again, my observations of the industry at large, and how again, the budgets didn't go away, they've just shifted. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, again, you've got all these agencies that have shrunk, that have let people go. And I've referred to this article that I saw in Forbes easily about a year ago, where they're saying, the greatest threat to traditional agencies is the legion of freelancers that they all let go.
Yeah.
And I really believe, I think it's true. And I think, by the way, that's going to become true for other industries. I often say that I see marketing as sort of the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
So, what was funny was when I launched my agency, I had a sort of a similar vision of like, okay, I wanted to create this online consortium of marketers.
Yeah.
Which is what you've done. Mm-hmm. But what was interesting about it, and what is really interesting about your project too, is that, at first I kind of had that vision, okay, I was going to create it. But then I realized it is happening organically, mm-hmm. right? Like, that's the thing, is that I think, people, like all of these agencies, all these people who either decided, some obviously went and said, okay, I'm going to go find another agency to work at. And we went off. And then a whole bunch of people went and said, okay, well, I need to up my skills and wrap my head around social, because I wasn't learning it at my last agency. And that's in a way sort of what happened with me. It was like, we were doing well, but then they neglected social. And it was the one gap I felt like in my skill set, that I was like, I'm not on the cutting edge anymore. I got to take care of this responsibility myself. So I taught myself. I went and, paid for online courses so that I would learn that stuff. Mm-hmm. Once you're responsible for your own training and development, why am I going to go work for a company?
Yeah. Totally.
So the community, so the industry has kind of reformed itself. And so when I see things like what you're doing, I think it's a good idea. I think it's just an expression of that sort of, like, we can't help but come together, right? Like, we're, as marketers, and especially in today's technology where things are going so fast, and it's just no one person can be the master of all. So we need each other.
Yeah.
But it's now, again, the virtual agency model just happened organically, whether I wanted to create one or not.
Exactly. I mean, that's even like, even with the digital agency founders, like, in its microcosm, it's still completely early days yet, but that we don't plan on at any point, like running ads, boosting a post, SEO particularly, maybe something like really basic SEO down the line, but nothing like massively like that, because in our vision that this can grow organically, because just like anything, if you offer something authentic and that something people actually need, then you're onto a winner. And it's not there for money for us. It's just there to help each other. And we just thought, well, we're doing it for ourselves. Let's do it for others. And I think, like many of us, we haven't always got time, whether you're an agency or you're a big company. And there's always like little, as you say, little pockets of things that you don't have. Maybe you don't have like someone in film or creative, or you just need someone to consult you. We're not just supplying people with agencies. We're there to be like, right, you know what? I really need someone that's epic at graphic design, or I need someone that's really good at like AR, whatever it is. I'm trying to speak to Cassie in a couple of weeks. Yeah, she's smashing it, and we're going to speak to people like her and have people like there on there. So you've got real specialist people that you might not just find on the open market, or you don't know where to look. So come to our site. We've already basically qualified them. We've spoken to them. We've got them on there. Got legend. Got the grab.
That's a great example though, because Casey, I love Casey's work, and I think she's so brilliant in the way that she picks up on all of those little fun things and again, they're not so much. She seems to gravitate towards the affinity builders. Mm-hmm. So that's, again, it goes back to one of those things, exactly what you were talking about. You said it, I said it off at the top of the show, about people thinking, they're just so transactionally minded. They want the immediate, like, okay, what's the shortest path? Okay, from this ad, what's my click-through rate? What's my return on my ad spend? Not thinking at all about branding, not thinking about client retention and long-term value. She does all these little things like AR, like all of these, chat bots, but it's really smart. It's really, really smart. It creates these relationships. She knows, it's emotion driven, right? GIFs, Giphies, and those stickers and all those things that she does emote something, and people actually feel a connection with that in a way more than words sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think it's really smart, but that's a perfect example of someone who's niched down into these little micro technologies, these little tools and tricks. No one person, no agency, no AI can be on top of all of that.
No, exactly that. And I think, it's just, you may struggle to sort of even know that kind of thing was even available. But the way we're going to kind of categorize things is essentially a method that would be, suggested. So we're kind of really in like building phase at the moment. So, I can't completely, tell you exactly how it works. I try not to sound too amateur about this, but I'm just, just being honest. But essentially that's the idea of it, that people like her will be pushed to the forefront where it will be needed. And I think, it's going back to what you're saying about like metrics. I mean, traditionally, and this is really, I wish and I'd love if this was how it was to work, is that rather than people reading into metrics, is that you used to say, well, this was pre-marketing and this is how my business was performing. This is marketing now, and now it's performing 20% better. Not like, oh, well, for $1 I put in, I've got 5 out. Down to absolute granular details. And they go, right, this person is saying he's got 20 return on ad spend, therefore I'm going to him. Not like, oh my God, they've increased just our general business and our revenue. This guy's smashing it. He's building our brand. Our long-term goal is going to be so much better with this guy. No, they don't care. They don't see. They're not thinking big picture of things. They're just seeing they're just seeing metrics. They just want to see instant metrics.
Yeah. No. It's the folly of the new technology and all the thrill that people kind of want to jump in on. But I agree. I don't know a single marketer who isn't on the same page as you and I on this one. That it's like, hey, everybody, there's branding. Don't forget that. Are you asking? Have you asked yourself, okay, most clients, when they came back, they would come back, they would be a repeat purchaser of, 5 times. Yeah. Has that changed? Has that gone up? Has that gone down? What do people think of you? Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I usually, if I do have a project with a client, I always want to have a conversation with them, like a debrief. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about how did this go? I want to know how was your experience? How can we do things better? Mm-hmm. None of this information that we're talking about gets conveyed or captured or interpreted through the metrics. And so, yeah, people need to think a lot more long term. I agree, and there's just so many strategies and ways to go at that. So
I know behind the scenes, changing subject slightly, that we spoke about public speaking, and it's something that I've seen an increase, I suppose, in the last 3 years. The sort of rise of public speaking is almost like a chosen career choice for marketers. What I wanted to know from you, do you think it's going to be like the next, I suppose, like the influencer marketing, the crash and burn, or do you think it's got like real legs on this one?
That's a great question. Here's my thought. I do think that thought leadership is a growing space, and I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Here's a big one, and this is sort of maybe an odd answer to your question, but it actually goes back to this, that I don't know about you, but to the extent that maybe when I was younger and I thought, thinking about career paths and so forth, politics had been disintegrating throughout my youth, right? Like the introduction of like television into the House of Commons and all this stuff, right? Like it just became this childish game. Mm-hmm. On top of that, governments are increasingly less capable of keeping up with technology and legislation and all this stuff. So I find the role of government both diminished and impotent. So what was years and years ago considered a role of distinction and a role of steering the direction of a nation, for example, in a society, I see that role being diminished. Yep. And that you can be much more effective on the psychological level simply by discussing and focusing around ideas. Absolutely. So for that reason, I see it as a growth market. I think that this is, we as like industry and individuals can probably affect greater change nowadays than even governments themselves. So as a result, that thought leadership and the fact that you can kind of steer that on the psychological level and skip the whole politics means that's where people will go. Yeah. That will become in other words, I'm saying that thought leadership to me becomes the sort of future position of distinction.
Mm-hmm. I think
that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think, for marketers and agencies and companies of all capacities, really. It's an important thing. And I'm not saying it needs to always be the CEO, but just someone within the industry, within the space to promote, because I think it's got two positives really for it. Obviously, we're talking about slightly outside of politics, but I think the first is just, like people using YouTube, such as yourself, to help promote and leverage your authenticity and your authority. I think public speaking is pretty similar. I mean, one of the quicker ways to get audience, I mean, you can get paid ones, which is even better, but I mean, it's great because you can really build authority. There's nothing that says confidence about, what you're talking about than speaking to hundreds of people or thousands of people. And I think that's really interesting side of business. And I think that's a great way of leveraging your knowledge. And at the same time, I think 9 times out of 10, I mean, I'm not sure about everybody, but you're trying to help, your real passion is portraying actually as some might think it's for money, but really I think that passion is really to help. And I think that's why people do it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. And that goes back to what I was saying about, that I don't think transactionally anymore. I've learned that one, it's way more fulfilling. I feel like my life purpose is really just to help, to serve, to facilitate communication and connections. I feel very good about how I know that, when I speak to clients and I'm a good listener, and then from that, I'm able to really think on behalf of them in their shoes and what is a good strategy for them. So I know that it's useful and helpful to them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I didn't even know where I was going with that, but yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. So,
do you think it's something that you'd move into like a bit more full time, or put a bit more energy into?
It's definitely where I'm trying to move more towards. I'm definitely picking up more speaking engagements, and exactly because one, it's just so fulfilling to help, to talk to people and then tell them about something that they didn't know or didn't realize, or see them have that aha moment after you've spoken to them. It's just so fulfilling. So, and sort of empowering people, that teach a man to fish, and you've empowered them and given them tools, and it's just really rewarding and fulfilling. And so yeah, like that's the goal of the show. It's like, I think there's more to it too, that I find, on top of that, I think I love what we do. I've said this many times. I love what we do. I love digital marketing. I love the technology. I have concerns though. There's downsides to it, right? Like of how social media has changed how we socialize. How algorithms tend to sort of reinforce biases. There's lots of things that I feel obligated to sort of warn people about, or discuss or talk about.
Yeah.
So it's a platform to because this technology hasn't just changed our industry, it's changed the world.
Yeah.
So I frequently find myself on this show talking about bigger, broader societal issues like that. Hey, are we all getting stuck in these isolation echo chamber tanks because of the algorithms?
Yeah.
You need to be aware of that. How can you counter that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, two fairly recent things was, I actually watched a documentary about the work of social media with Trump. And I'm not going to put any kind of political opinion out there, but I know that there was a huge amount of biases, whether it was down to literally like choosing a red button to press, support or donate in, New York on the east, or it was blue to press vote or donate on the west side, in like California. So, and it's like, they played such, the whole, like, the Cambridge Analytica, all that kind of stuff causes huge amounts of trouble. And we had the very same thing with Brexit. I mean, again, it doesn't matter my political agenda, but really the problem is that Facebook shouldn't, I think there's some things that need to be stood away from. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of my take on it.
No, I agree. Like we have to talk again. This is the thing, is like these things are changing. These things are having impacts. I don't know if you have kids. I have kids. I worry about, how, right? Like the impact, social media, just all the technology and the sort of addictiveness of these games that they throw on there. Like all of these things we as a society have to talk about. And it's through talking about this that, again, I think we can affect more change. than if I were to go to government and try to pass a bill. And, you know, I mean, by that time, there would be 10 more technologies that I'm concerned about.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel that the governments are pushing in the right direction? I know that Facebook's obviously changing things quite a lot recently. You know, they're not inhibiting, but, you know, they're blocking certain things we're allowed to talk about. Do you think that's a good move? I mean, I personally do, and that's probably some spaces.
Look, I mean, I think somebody has to be accountable for what gets posted on there. And I do have a slight, like, that gray zone. I mean, if the users, you know, if they're not the publisher, that's basically what they hide behind, right? That we're just the platform, we're not the publisher. But you really kind of are the publisher.
Yeah.
So do you have a responsibility? Yes, to a certain extent. There's a flip side of that, which is that I feel that, you know, we focus on Facebook, whereas, you know, why all on them? They're not the only sort of collectors of personal data.
Yeah, Google.
Nor are they the only ones to ever be sort of have that data. You know, the Cambridge Analytica scandal was much ado about nothing as far as I was concerned, in terms of, you know, it wasn't as if they'd been hacked.
Yeah.
Although they're hackable, by the way.
What's the code?
Yeah, right. You know, so no, but I mean, you can create a bot to go in to log in as an individual.
Yeah.
And start culling data. Yeah. Like, you know, who's so you know, and who's responsible for all of that? You know, I mean, look, I believe in corporate social responsibility. I believe the government has a responsibility. We as individual citizens all have a shared responsibility.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a difficult balance between responsibility and free speech, which I know obviously at the moment is a very sort of hot topic and very popular. And it's trying to find somewhere in the middle, because, like, for me personally, you can't have everything as free speech, because before you know it, everything's bullshit. You don't know what's going on and what isn't. You know, there has to be some sort of regulation to say, like, well, this is actually happening, or I've just wrote it on the back of my hand and made it up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you there's always going to be false information, you know? Yeah, no, we live in it's good that you're like, that's the thing, is at least we're talking about it. Neither of us have the answers.
No.
So be it. But at least, like, you know, put a flag saying, you know, hey, there's a bit of an issue here, or where's this going?
Bit naughty.
Yeah.
As long as they're not like tracking down the kind of porn I'm watching, I'm happy. Yeah. I don't personally, exactly. I'm not concerned about psychometric data being used, because, you know, I would rather be delivered ads personally that make sense to me, rather than, for example, some feminine hygiene product that I'm never going to buy because I'm not female. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So I think, but, you know, I also I operate on these stuff. Like, nothing's private anymore. Just is what it is, isn't it?
It is what it kind of is what it is. Like, I don't know that this is the thing. Like, there's so many things. This is the reality of it, right? We're in a big social experiment. We don't know where it's going. And the cat's out of the bag. Like, Pandora's box is open. You can just sort of pull down. We're under a big web of artificial intelligence. Google search engine is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
We're surrounded. We're engulfed by this technology, and the genie's out of the bottle.
I mean, it's moving further and further into our, you know, it's borderline compulsory to see, you know, advertising and marketing. I mean, once, you know, originally it was only because you had to go on Google to look at something, an ad popped up, and then Facebook, and then obviously it rolls on your feed. And now it's, you know, within videos, you know, it's in content, it's in stream. But now, you know, obviously now they've moved it into messaging, Facebook messages. And even more recently, you know, it's in WhatsApp. You know, you're seeing advertising within WhatsApp. And these are things like you expect to kind of keep separate in a sense. Messaging, you know, Facebook Messenger, you can kind of see why and how, and you're still within like the platform. But WhatsApp, I think you always, well, for like me, always felt it was like a safe haven for, you know, marketing and all that kind of stuff. And you could just, you know, message in your friends. It's like you don't get a text message, you know, you don't scroll through your text messages and see stuff. So that's a kind of like interesting thing of how it's like that marketing is real kind of like, it's nearly covering like all bases across your technology.
Well, yeah. Although we always have, right? So like, as soon as it's like, oh, you put up a new road, great. That's a new place for a billboard.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Like, I mean, we'll always fill up. I mean, that's a good question, right? Do we marketers ruin everything?
There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, but do we marketers ruin everything? Is that the thing? Is it us who are kind of destroying these platforms?
Or is it the platforms themselves? Oh, but I suppose, if once upon a time, there was only a limited amount of companies that were promoting themselves on Facebook. Now it's day regard. Everybody does it,
right?
Or the majority of people do. So therefore, you're going to be flooded with it, and that's just the way it is, isn't it?
It is the way it is. Like, this is the thing, right? Like, everybody, people. There's an open space for somebody to then come out and communicate what they have to sell and offer. People are going to get out there. Like, you can't stop it.
People get this whole idea of, no, this is how it should be and this is how it shouldn't be. But people complaining obviously about supermarkets and high streets dying and all this kind of stuff. And actually, something I spoke to my dad about, and he said, yeah, but what you conceive is a shame. He said, high streets, as you know it, when I were young, wasn't even anything like what you think it is now. Supermarkets basically weren't there. Everyone went onto this whole idea of hating supermarkets. He said, but when I was young, getting like a cucumber, maybe not a cucumber, but something like that was like exotic. It was like basically post-war rationing, where you had to go into a tiny shop. You could only get local produce, a limited amount. And supermarkets have changed the world for the better. And now it's just changing again. And it's not like things have always been the same until now. It's not like that. It's just every now and, every 10, 20 years or every 5 years, there's a big shift in how society works. And I think we're just in the middle of that at the moment, and all things will become settled and we'll feel probably more comfortable with it. But at the moment, you're like, what's next? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I often say, yeah, exactly. Progress is serpentine. Yeah. Right. The pendulum shifts and we kind of shift. And if we go too far in that one direction, then all of a sudden people are like, oh, we've gone too far. And then it shifts the other way. And sometimes that solution is maybe equally radical, but once we move towards there, then we're constantly correcting. But for sure, I mean, if you look, I agree with what your father's saying. Like, one, you can't stand in the way of technology. It always happens. I had a guest on my show earlier. One of my earlier guests, he had this great example. He was saying how his grandfather cursed. He has a company now that actually builds all these electronics and refrigerators. And he's like, it's ironic because my grandfather cursed refrigerators because his old job was to go into the ice, go over to ice and cut out these big blocks and bury it. And then he would go deliver it door to door for people to keep their food cold. So he hated refrigerators. He thought this technology was an abomination, right? People worry about, oh my God, these new self-driving cars, Google cars, it killed somebody. I was like, well, okay, but how many people were killed in horse carriage accidents before? There were probably, when the first car killed somebody, there were hundreds of people dying in horse carriage accidents. So, it's going to happen. This technology is going to, you can't stand in its way.
You've got to be malleable, haven't you?
Yeah, you can't. So you can't stand in its way. And I also encourage people to really if you really look at what are important metrics, in terms of, how long are people living? What's the average income of a household, for example? Globally across the world, the progress that we've made over the last 200 years is incredible. The last 100, even more impressive than the 100 years before. The last 20 is actually almost as impressive as the 100 years before it. When I was a kid and what we called the third world almost doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right? 100 years ago, or 200 years ago for sure, everybody on the planet essentially lived under 40. Now the average lifespan across the world, even in the world, is now above 40.
Well, as you said, I think we spoke about this before. There's more technology in these things than there was, landing on the moon.
When they did the lunar landing, you've got more computational power in your pocket on a daily basis, and that's why I do this show and get out there and tell people. That was the slogan of my business. My first slogan was "Believe the future has arrived." It doesn't mean that that we're done and that we've hit some sort of plateau of how technology. It means
we're too clever.
How good does it have to get before you can say, okay, if they can freaking land on the moon with that technology and I'm carrying it every day, how can I use this device to make my life better?
Yeah.
And that is the mindset shift that I say, again, it goes back to an abundance mindset. There's opportunity. There's huge opportunity today. And it's really a matter of going back to figuring out who you are, who your authentic person is, living it, and good things will flow from that. I believe that.
I think, you know, just going back to the public speaking side of things, I think that's what kind of makes it really interesting. I mean, I've been tinkering with the idea. I think I'm not far enough down the line yet and doing like this kind of stuff first and putting myself out publicly. But I think it's something that, you know, I mean, marketing you can never be perfect at. But I think as, you know, agency owners or entrepreneurs or however you see yourself, like for me personally, I think public speaking is a nice thing that's separate because it's something you can really like fine tune your mindset over. It's completely digital marketing is one thing, you know, it's well, we know it is, you know, it's tech, it's creative, it's copy, it's audiences, blah, 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 blah. But like public speaking, like for me, it's great because it's like how you fine tune your mind and like how you're like, some of it's, I suppose, a sales pitch, but it's really just, it's all about mindset. And I think that's what's so great. It's almost like an opportunity for you to work on your own, you know, on yourself and who you are.
Yeah, it focuses. You're right. It focuses your mind on your thought to clarify and be very clear. Because you have to challenge your thought. You're like, okay, if I'm going to go out there and stand on a stage and present this idea or theory, does it stand? Is it solid? So you really, exactly, it forces your mind to really challenge your ideas. Yeah. And then exactly as that, it's an opportunity to connect with people. You know, there's nothing like being able to you know, go up and talk, and then from there have somebody come up and say, hey, I like what you were saying, and then they're excited to talk to you, and they tell you what their individual problem is and give them that feedback, and immediately you've made a real connection with that person, and you've helped them, and you see that side, man, that's worth more than money for
me. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of a better emotion.
Yeah, it is. Well, this is, you know, at the end of the day, this is what we deal in. This is what I said. Like our core purpose is to facilitate communication and connection, which is fundamental to life. All forms of life seek to communicate and connect, and this is what we do. And I find, and for me, that at least just it helps me. Maybe that's just my way of giving what I do meaning, but it's important for me to live purposefully.
Well, maybe, dude, I can fly over to Toronto and we can do a little dual speech.
Oh man, I'm all for that. I'd love that. I'd love to see you come down here. That'd be great. I gotta get out there too, man. I gotta get out there too, though. I'd love to go.
Have you been before?
No.
We're not missing much at the moment. I mean, for us, it seems quite warm at about 15 degrees today, but that's because we've had about the last 3 months of about 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. So all things are comparison. That's why I've got my wine
on. That's beautiful spring weather for us.
Exactly. Yeah, we're in spring now, so it's kind of cool. And last summer we had about a good 2 and a bit months of like 30 degrees. So we had a really good summer. So it wasn't all piss and rains and Mary Poppins.